This week on RSBANDB Update, layoffs hit the RuneScape team and Jagex. We discuss who's gone, why the layoffs happened, and what it means for the future of RuneScape. The 2024 financials are also out, and they back up these dire circumstances. Is RuneScape in trouble? This is RSBANDB Update, episode 1040, recorded Thursday, June 5th, 2025. A fiscal massacre. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of RSBANDB Update. I will say that on Sunday evening, this is not the podcast. I planned to be delivering one episode out from our 20th anniversary, but lo and behold, here we are. Folks probably know about the Jagex Layoff news. We'll get to all that in short order, but Tanis, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Shane, and I'm glad I can be here to talk about this Red Wedding or Saturday Night Massacre, whatever you want to call it. I think there's plenty of examples in history that we can draw from.
All right. We also got here everybody's second favorite Australian, Pernasius. Welcome aboard.
G'day all.
And Lemon is also here. You're a recent addition to the podcast this week because we weren't expecting another episode of Jagex Financials 11 weeks only after the last one. Were we?
Yeah, no. 6:30 this afternoon. It's like, oh, what's going on? Oh, somebody posted the financial statements to Reddit. Oh, great. Guess we're going to be podcasting tonight. Let's speedrun the financials.
And thank you for doing that, and thank you in advance for your input on that. Lemon, of course, has been with us for previous financial episodes and the Explosive Invention episode as well, but you are also part of your group Iron Man, the Michelin Milkmaids. Rank presently, if you know offhand. Sorry to put you on the spot.
12, I think.
12.
We were 12 last week.
Wow, right on. Right on. And you got like the rank 68th or something main group Iron Man as well. So when it comes to all things Iron, you kind of know the lay of the land. But of course, in the meantime, big, huge thank you goes out to all our experienced here Patreon members. We got this week Amos Reed, Bladecom, Dominic R, Hare A, Jason S, Jesse W, Lemon Lodge, Luminos, Ricky A, Runestar, Oasis, Snail Mage, The Naked Captain, and Tim. Big, huge thank you to all those people. They make RSBANDB Update go. And, of course, we'll talk more about that in the Patreon offerings a bit later. And does anybody else get the Make RSBANDB Update Go reference?
No.
Nope.
No, okay. I'll save that for another day then. There's a little back reference there. If you know me, you might be able to pin it together. But, of course, if you want to follow along, full show notes over at update.show. We have a community Discord at update.show/Discord, and the friends chat can be found in game at BitsBytes. All right, so just diving into this right now, a massive collection of layoffs at Jagex, or as they say in the UK, making people redundant. We have been able to confirm, amongst others, Mod Jack, Mod Pebble, Mod Timbo. Definitely for sure. There's questions as well surrounding Mod Astar, Bam, Fowl, Kitsune, Mickey, and Steed, and that's based off of the differences in the news post sign-offs. But there is a caveat with this. We don't necessarily know if these guys left this week or sometime in the intervening period, because that sign-off isn't always updated weekly. Some might have left prior to the layoffs, but it's clear at this point that we have a huge, big internal shakeup going on at the company pertaining to these layoffs, and it was confirmed by Mod Hooley as well. So let's just start with you, Tanis, about some thoughts on this, and I'll go to Hooley after we do our initial round.
Hooley?
Yeah.
Hooley's comment.
Hooley's post.
Oh, okay. I was like,
Is Huli in the room with us?
what? Like, just okay. Yeah, this is really sad to hear. I'm not a fan. I was telling you guys my how something like this ruined my lifelong love affair with football. I hope it doesn't do that with RuneScape. I just hate to see things like this. I hate to see things mean, we people want to justify stuff with that. Business is business. Not me. I'm more like a Marlon Brando where loyalty is everything. I mean, but no, they had to pull a Cambridge mob and invite everybody to a quinceanera and bah, 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 and
Yeah, it's very, very rough. And when you look at this, it spans so many people and so many years. How about you, Pern?
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at. I mean, Phil Mansell allegedly retired.
Mod Pips, the former CEO.
Yes, and I do say allegedly because they always say he has stepped down from the role, but we all know that quite often means he was pushed out, especially after the recent takeover. And you've got some big names in there: Mod Jack, Mod Timbo. These are sort of original developers who've been there, a decade or more, and have been there for the devs, have been there for the players, not sort of worrying so much about costs as much as they worry about what is good for the game, what is good for the players, what is good for, their fellow workers. So, it is one of those things that happens on takeovers. It is all about the money. We've seen it countless times. I've experienced it myself. And those people who tend to will rock the boat for the betterment of the game against company wishes are generally the first on that chopping block for, as they call, redundancies, where we've made your position untenable, or we're doing changes that means that the position's not there anymore, so we have to let you go. And then 3 or 4 months later, look, we need that position again, and they'll put someone else there. So it's one of those unfortunate things in this day and age when you have big corporations, parent companies and such, looking only at that bottom line. These sort of massacres happen, and as I said,
that's a good way of putting it.
With
massacre, as Tannis kind of said on that regard.
Yeah,
Mod Jack was there since 2010. Mod Timbo since 2008. Speaking in terms of just some of the people involved. Another one, as we mentioned, also confirmed, Mod Pebble, who we had on the show about accessibility and did so much for accessibility, and I know that was just such a huge impact for the game in that regard. So we'll talk more about the impact of this on dev stuff in a little bit. But Lemon, your thoughts?
It's always frustrating and tragic, and unfortunately, it's not super surprising to have layoffs after private equity acquisitions. It doesn't mean it's
a CEO change.
CEO change. We'll talk about the financials from last year in a little bit, but one of the things I just really want to mention is mods Shrike and Mod Breezy, and I'm sure there was probably at least one other in there as well that I am forgetting off the top of my head, but they were
Discord
talking in
comments about Jack in particular.
In the lore channel,
I saw that
about Jack. I mean, being a friend and a mentor, and it just, it sucks, for morale when you lose your coworkers in a way like this. But it sucks so much losing a friend and somebody who had such passion. And I think the thing that is so frustrating to me is like it feels like this is a matter that the players just like cannot have any influence over.
No,
it's not like there's a change that's happening to the game where maybe we could petition and get something reversed. It's like, oh, these people are no longer with the company and they're gonna be sorely missed by the players and by their coworkers.
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it in that regard. And I know for me when I look at this, it's just such an unfortunate situation to be in because when you look at this, you look at people that have a collection of institutional knowledge about that, and we'll come back to the theory crafting on this as it is. But you look at Timbo, all the skill launches practically since he moved from community management in 2012 to game design he's had his hands in. That's like our archaeology, necromancy, invention, divination, everything in that regard, as well as systems things like Group Iron Man and the forthcoming leagues. Jack, the mining and smithing rework. I think everybody is gonna, if you point to Bot Jack in an update, it's the mining and smithing rework as the big one. So
that's it. And it's that knowledge base of the history of the game too, with guys like Timbo and Jack who've been there for so long. I mean, that's a huge loss for the company, and they've got to. I mean, bottom line, they're looking at money, but they've got to also factor in, which is what I don't think they've done here, is that loss of knowledge base.
Thank you, Pern. That's something I wanted to bring up. That's one of the things that really bothers me. And it's not like this private equity company is unique, but at the same time, it's also not like I'm going to sit here and take it. It's like, no, BS. Like, you lose so much. When you lose Jack, you do lose someone that will tell you no. And guess what? He told the players and the other side no. Both. Equally.
Oh, yeah.
When we needed to hear it. That's a big loss. And he had a vision that's not easy to replace. And he was a link between a little bit of an older guard that I see with like Mod Osborne and Mod Mart in that group, and what there is there now. So that's irreplaceable. Mod Timbo, okay, yeah, we know all the projects he's been on, but we also know he's like the official, unofficial balancer in chief. Like, where are things without Timbo? And Timbo we trust.
Yeah,
what
like we said, that's been a show title before, and it would be on the RuneScape money if such a thing, existed to the
so they
level.
They can say, oh, the position does, but you can't replace. It's not redundant.
Well,
And
I want to clarify that, because that's a term that's not used in North America much. But there's laws in the UK, and Pern, you said that you have them in Australia like that.
Yeah.
That to remove somebody effectively, to lay them off, you can't just, delete their position and fire them like you can in North America. You have to be able to show that their position has been made redundant. Henceforth, why the pretense is, we're going to make it so we don't need this position anymore. Like we might split positions or something like
Restructuring. Restructuring is what they call it down here.
And in that, I think, and I think, but in that, at least the way it always works over here, is they just split your job up with a couple other people that are already working to their capacity. So now they're doing another person's job or half of that job, and it never goes well. No. But it's redundant because their duties are being taken care of, but they're not the same way.
to go back to what you said about Mod Jack, though, I mean, as you said, I mean, he would tell the player base no too. I mean, he cancelled a couple of things I was really looking forward to, but I'm pissed off at the time. But then when you sit back and look and you sort of say you see what he says about it, why. Listen, we can't do it. You go, okay, yeah, I don't like it, but I can understand it because it is for the betterment of the game. And he was, he didn't play favourites. He looked at the game and said, this is what's good for the game. This is what's going to be good for both sides. And, I mean, him and Timbo were the biggest. When Shane told me earlier, I was like, nah, it's... it was just a shock.
Yeah, and just to show the impact this is having internally, I pulled up the post from Breezy and Shrike, and Breezy effectively says is that he was, one of the best mentors, let alone managers you could have when he moved from QA to design, and then when he joined the mining and smithing rework team with him on it. And he says that he doesn't think anyone came close to the design mentorship he gave. And Shrike says that Jack has always been a great mentor and inspiration of hers. So when you look at all that sort of stuff, you know that, yes, we're feeling it as players. But the people who see these guys each and every day, this has probably been one of the worst weeks that Jagex has ever had.
Yeah, and... if I may, I just want to say thanks to all of them, but I want to say thanks to Mod Pebble, because Mod Pebble, you made a tangible difference, right? A tangible difference in people being able to play this game, and it sucks to lose you because you drove that, and I don't know what happens now, but I do know what happens for you. You go on to another place and you bring that same fire with you, and it sucks, but I just high contrast mode really helps. The outlines help. All the stuff that you involved, it helps. So I just wanted to really make that clear. Because I know everyone's looking at and we all feel it, right? Like we all feel, where would we be without Timbo and Jack and and all that. But I also have to say, like, where would, at this point, where would I be without Pebble? Because I'm used to this stuff and the game is so much easier. Like, I feel like, where would I be?
Yeah, and see, that's the thing. Accessibility, as I understand it, started as one of her pushes. And, you realize that it's going to be something you design into updates, but it really helps when you got somebody on that QA level who is and has been pushing that. So I want to go to what Mod Hooli had to say on this. He did confirm once the Reddit post was posted, and he said that these are part of the company changes in a restructure as Jagex puts more emphasis on RuneScape games and community growth. The majority of the roles are from non-game dev and non-player facing areas. There are some exceptions within the RS team as a part of the company's focused on a streamlined development approach. This is not a change in direction from what Mod North has said before. They're still committed to growing the game and investing in it, which, I mean, of course you're gonna say that at that point in time. The roadmap won't change because of these job reductions, and they'll continue on the great path they've been on with the content, and they'll talk about that to us when the time is right. And I kind of wanted to touch on some of the stuff that might have got us to this point here on this. And I think the first thing I want to say, in addition to everything we've talked about on the people side here, is that when you look at this, I think in terms of game content, I feel like everything we probably got up until about September at this point is fairly cooked and set in stone. And if there's going to be a major shift falling from that, maybe expect some downtime in November as we work in between that period between the Halloween and Christmas events. If any kind of roadmap change were to come from that, do you guys think that that's a fair assessment?
Valid.
Okay.
Yeah. And that, again, that's going to affect their bottom line, because that's when Premier memberships for a lot of people come up.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a crystal ball to know that that'll happen, but I mean, when was the last time we changed EP or changed major direction for the game that something like that didn't happen?
Exactly, and especially when you get people of this caliber out of the company, and others have to sort of step up and try and fill those gaps on top of their own duties. I mean, you're cutting about 15%. From these
probably
about
departments. 10 for the entire company.
10 for but I'm just talking about department wise. It's it's a lot of load to put on someone else's shoulders, and these people would have been working on stuff that is going to be coming up at that time, and all of a sudden someone else has to take over, and you're coming up at the time when your Premier club, the majority of people start renewing. It's like, well, maybe I just hold back for a little while and see what they're going to do, and we may see a big drop in membership sort of going through that November, December, January period.
But wait, there's more a little bit later in the show on numbers and membership and all that.
Yeah.
I think there's one change that we could see sooner rather than later. And that is an increase in Treasure Hunter.
Oh, but you missed the Mod North thing earlier this year where he said that the current microtransaction path for RS3 is not sustainable.
Yeah, we'll see about that.
My grand theory about how all this came to be is it comes back to the fact that they were recently sold to the different private equity firm. We now have the new CEO, Mod North, in place. And, if you look at the paperwork of when he actually signed on, and officially, that was early May. And here we are, a month and a bit later, we have all these big changes happening. And
that's the big clean out.
Yeah. And, based on what we will talk about in a little bit in the numbers, it's clear that the business people up top want to see, some significant cutbacks and, leading towards increasing that profit number at the end of the day. And the people that they chose to focus on were the people, like you said, Tanis, who had that institutional knowledge. But they're also the people, and this is very common in the tech and gaming industry, to go after your people who are going to tell that middle management class no. Because they're hooked in with the players and what the rest of maybe their with their colleagues want. They have that power to say no. And if you look at the people who have been around a long time and can wield that kind of weight in the company, those are people like Mod Jack, like Mod Timbo. Plus, you cut around, unfortunately, the junior dev side as well, which, a lot of the people listed there were hit in that regard. So I think that's why, we saw some of the higher ups cut as well in this regard.
Well, and maybe maybe what Mod North means when he says it's not sustainable is that they're not doing enough. That those people were protecting the players too much, protecting the other devs too much, protecting
see, that's the thing. I think they're in a catch-22 position, and we'll see this again in the numbers. I keep alluding to that, where if you increase the amount of monetization you have now, you're going to turn people away. But the monetization model as it stands right now isn't bringing enough money in for the people who are concerned about that. And, this is what happens when you're on the path of private equity. A lot of people you might not be aware of this, but Jagex for probably the last decade, close to the last decade at this point, has been majority owned by private equity companies. And the idea behind that is that these companies are just in and out. to make a profit. They pick up the company, maybe, make some subtle changes around the edges and figure out what they can do to extract more profit off it. Then they sell it off again and again and again. And it's the same thing that's happened to so many other big companies that we all know in the last 25 years or so. And I think that when you look at all of this, this is a tailspin that doesn't end. This is a tailspin that doesn't end, because the only way you break out of that private equity cycle is if you sell the company to somebody who is not backed by, that kind of money.
Where does Bellamy come from?
That's actually a good question, because when you look at his history, he, prior to this, well, I'll start with his RuneScape history. He actually worked at Jagex from like 15 to 18 on Old School.
Okay. So he does have
But after that, he went and he was a venture capitalist investor. And his last company before this was an online effectively mobile game casino company.
Great.
And I think that's why, he got out ahead of everybody and put out that message with the community managers saying, "Oh no, we're not going to do that," because people would have Googled where he came from. So
yeah,
I think that, people like to, just recap that people like Jack and Timbo who were targeted because, they've been there for so long, they can say no to the higher ups, to the suits, as it were. And this is a push by the private equity owners to pull more profit out of the company around the edges by, making those reductions. And it hasn't been a good, year to 2 years in the games industry. And we were wondering if Jagex would get hit at some point, and, here we are. But
scary that he's actually, when you say that he's worked in Jagex before, has gone off and done these online casino games, and now has come back as a company director, and that is actually a worry, because what did he see back then that he now wants to buy into the company and do all that type of stuff?
Yeah, and see, the thing was, when he came in, he was presented as effectively, the player's CEO to set the game on, the right path, as it were. And we did a lot of reading into his messaging about the current monetization structure of RS3 not being sustainable, and we see that in the numbers. And I keep dancing around that. So is there anything else on the layoffs from anyone, Lemon, Pern, Tanis, before we move on?
Yeah, I do. I also just put chocolate in my mouth. It's so
okay.
Very, very bad timing. I do want to.
I'll jump in first while you eat that chocolate, if you like.
Go ahead.
I just want to say a huge thank you. I've been playing the game for nearly 15 years now, and to every one of those mods who unfortunately did lose your jobs, I just want to say a huge thank you for, a decade and a half of great gameplay, entertainment. There's things I haven't liked there, but there's things I've loved, and there's a lot more things that, I've enjoyed than I haven't enjoyed. So a huge thank you. Good luck for your futures. I know you'll do great wherever you go, and, the best of luck to you all.
Yeah. Thank you. And, everyone that's left behind, hang in there. I'm sure it's scary. And I don't know how it works in the UK. This is about the time where I start looking across the cubicle being like, hey, man, one for all for one. Hey, you know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying, bro?
That's the point. I start hunting around for a new job for myself, so I'm ready to walk out and into a new one before they can get rid of me.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, and
but you can't fire everybody at the same time, so that's what I'm saying. All for one,
exactly,
one for all.
So the thing that I want to say about this is that this podcast has a history of not over sensationalizing things and not jumping in on, I guess flames or the clickbait, the rage bait that, is produced, whether it be on YouTube or on Reddit or what have you, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think that we are in a position here at this point in time where combining this with the financials, something drastic has to change in the ways that specifically the RuneScape 3 game is run. Because after seeing this, after seeing the numbers, I'm actually worried. And when was the last time that I said I was worried? And, Tannis, I think when I first told you about this on Monday, I said, there's bad RuneScape news, and you're like, you never say that. You never say bad news.
Yeah, never.
So I am legitimately worried about what comes next, and whether there be some sort of deep dive into the path that they plan to take for the game over the next 18 months or so, or beyond content, some sort of grand strategy for, how are you going to bring people back into the RS3 side? Those are conversations that whoever is designing this game, reporting to an executive producer that's reporting to the business people that made these decisions this week, those people need to be having those conversations yesterday about how to bring these people back to RS3 and grow this game so that it doesn't keep hemorrhaging and that we get to a point where they have to cut back on content.
And how do you do that when you... I mean, I know this is what happens, but I don't understand how you do that when you cut your most valuable player, your head coach, your defensive coordinator. Like, everybody that knows everything and is intimately connected. How do you make those kinds of... Well, the only kinds of change... I don't see changes for the good. I mean, I don't know. Like,
no, there's nothing here that's for the good, except for extracting more money.
But I'm like, right? Like, I'm not seeing, and that's why I mean, I don't see how you get to a good place when you're getting, you know what I mean? Like, the only changes you can make are negative. Like, yeah.
It's hard to read any positives for the player into this.
Exactly, and. Like I said, we see these videos. RuneScape is dying. RuneScape's being put into maintenance mode. The devs don't care. Yada, yada, yada. Ding, ding, ding. All the way to the bottom of the list, right? No, this is something that you should actually be worried about.
Yeah. No, I've been watching those videos since 2012.
Yeah.
And I've never heard Shane say, I got bad news about the game. Never. Never have you said you're legitimately concerned. And
I've never been legitimately concerned like I am at the moment.
And I feel like I know how... I'm so afraid they're going to take all of the wrong lessons. Yes, obviously something does need to be done, but I think it's because, like, it's that period of hero pass into a lack of content that only starts to regain trust back when you get a roadmap, and then it starts to get executed, that roadmap, and you finally start to get to a place where people are finally starting to feel somewhat, not like they did, but a little bit more stable. You pull the rug out with those who were fixing it. I don't know. So how do you what's the game plan then? Like, how do you win the next game?
Yeah, you take a big risk, but the unfortunate thing is private equity businesses don't take risks. You know, the company, like I said, became incredibly risk averse after EOC and the backlash of RS3 to the point that they never took a big risk after that with RS3. And then somehow the most popular product that Jagex now publishes is a game that's pulled every week that has the aesthetic of 2008 that, still treats you like you're in 2008. And that's where they found their success in that regard. Take a big risk with RS3. Take a big risk. Become risky again.
Sorry, Lemon, I cut you off because you're eating your chocolate. Well, what was your thoughts?
No worries. Really shouldn't be eating chocolate while doing a podcast. I just wanted
Hey, people don't know this, but I eat all the time while I'm doing the show. That you just don't hear it.
I just wanted to quickly say, like, a really heartfelt thank you to Maud Fowl. For those of you who don't know, Maud Fowl did the Pride event last year. She was the one who made the legally distinct furniture sharks and the proud titles and the overhead emotes. And for those of us in the community, she was just like a beacon of delight. And it's really sad to see her go. And let me rephrase that. It's very sad to see her gone. There's nothing going on this year for Pride, but you can get the emotes and stuff
by rerunning Tales of Pride.
From Tales of Pride, yeah. So if you're on a new account, like I am for my group Iron, make sure you check that out this month to get them while you can. So.
Yeah, and when you tee up everybody that we're talking about here, we've spent most of the time talking about people like Jack and Timbo, but you have to hand it out to everybody. Everybody else on this list, Pebble, everybody else, Fowl, and the people who aren't on this list that we're not outright addressing, whether they be in IT or some form of management or publishing or what have you. You have to, just stick a hand out to everybody and say, yeah, this is bad. It's really bad. And, the community and the player base is always going to be with the devs on this, despite how much they, push back on various pieces of content. But, something I think at this point, like I said, it's a thing that needs to change. And I hope that we're going to be able to, see some sort of movement, either, roadmap-wise or maybe something from the CEO and business side, including maybe even, the executive producer. Because I think they said they were getting a new executive producer at some point, but they still haven't introduced that person to us. But, just some sort of form of encouragement, I think, to say that, hey, we have a plan. We're making a plan. This is what it is. But until then, we're kind of left in the lurch. And I'll just say again, this is perhaps the most worried I've ever been as a RuneScape 3 player. All right. I'm going to thank some Patreon supporters, then we'll talk about the numbers and see if we can glean anything else into that. But this week, big, huge thank you to Alaska, Alvaro L., Amos Reed, Arvidsel, Bladecom, Brandon F., Chilbura, Dominic R., Duramax, Golden XP, Gila Fleur, Harry, Jade Gizmo, Jason S., Jesse W., Lemon Lodge, Luminos, Mongra, Pernasius, Ricky A., Robbie D., Runestar, Samuel FL, Scott DS, Shirt Pants, Oasis, Snail Mage, The Naked Captain, The Dabbing Goat, Tim, Ukulele Steve, Woody, Zant, and Zazakon. Big, huge thank you, everybody, for supporting the show, supporting us doing what we do each and every week. And if you want to learn more about this and all our Patreon offerings, head on over to patreon.com/RSBANDB. You can support the podcast there for as little as $1 a month, and in doing so, you gain access to 80-plus monthly bits now. These are bonus shows. We just published one on runes and the rune economy, an entire deep dive looking at the sources of runes, what caused rune prices to go up over time, what some profit making endeavors with rune crafting might look like, and then finally a bit of a discussion about rune crafting's place in the game. If you're interested in that, gain access to that one and all the other episodes for as little as $1 a month. We also have the VIP tier at $3 a month, where you get a Discord rank, a Discord channel, and access to high-quality stereo versions of the show in addition to everything else. Then we have the Insider tier, where for $5 a month you get a shout-out on the podcast each and every week and exclusive access to clips that we use to make the clip show at the end of the year. And we have, just in time for the 20th anniversary, wink wink, one spot open in the Experience tier. Those are the premier RSBANDB update supporters. You get your shout-out at the start of the show, and you also have the opportunity to come sit down with us, listen to a live recording of the show, and have a bit of a Q&A with us. And those people also get periodic mail-outs of RSBANDB update goodies. And yeah, I mentioned 20th anniversary because, what do we do around anniversaries with the Experience tier? Oh yeah, we send things out. What could that be? Nobody knows what it is this year. Nobody knows what it is this year yet.
A picture of Shane 20 years ago, and then a picture of him now.
I mean, you could do that.
Now.
Fun fact on that, I renewed my license back in February, right? And my photo looks exactly the same as it did 5 years ago. Same pose, same hairline, same jacket. Not too much aging at all on that.
Way to go.
So that was 5, but yeah, okay, so Tannis's venture is a picture. Pern? Lemon, want to hazard a guess?
Well, we were having a bit of a discussion a little while ago, so I'm not going to say anything.
Oh, right. Right. That was a bit of a discussion.
I'm going to choose.
Right.
Yeah, I'm going to choose one of two things. So, and that might give it away. So I'm not going to say anything.
All right. Fair enough. I forgot we had that discussion.
Yeah.
But I haven't shown anyone which we went with yet, or what it looks like.
No. But it's one of two. So.
All right, Lemon, you want to hazard
and
a
they
guess?
were both good.
No, I'm not sure. I will say that for the 1000 episode anniversary, I don't know, it's not an anniversary, milestone, shall we say, you sent out a little patch, like for a jacket or a backpack or something
Mission
like
patch,
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's super cool. I have that up at my office at work.
Very nice. So yeah, something like that. But patreon.com/RSBANDB. Thanks so much, everyone. All right, so the financial report. We weren't expecting to get one of these this soon. So let's just start off from the top here.
What it was funny is I asked you when you told me about the dropping of everyone when they were sacking everyone. I said, "Have we seen the financial report?" And you go, "No, it hasn't come out. They only released last year's one." A few weeks ago, and lo and behold, 2 days later it pops. Someone's been listening to us.
Yeah. Okay. So let's go through this, and I know we'll go amongst everyone here, but initially, to pick up where we were on the layoffs, revenue has remained in line with the previous year at 151 million, down from 152. But old school subscription revenue has grown significantly, they said. Meanwhile, this has been balanced by a decrease in RuneScape 3 revenue, mainly to a reduction in membership numbers.
Yeah,
Bam.
It's we unfortunately don't get the split between the two games anymore in the audited financials.
That would be scary if they did do that. I think we'd have bigger issues if they did, and that's probably why they don't, because they know we look at these things.
Yeah, I mean it's.
But at the end of the day, the day, it's a company, and all goes into a Jagex pot, right?
Yeah. So we know that for the year, total subscribers increased by 200,000 up to 2.5 million, and daily active users are up by 100K to 1.3 million. But we don't know what this. I mean, we have some proxies that we use in the community. But we don't know exactly what those, what the break between RS3 and OSRS is. As they say, they do specifically call out RuneScape 3 had a decline in players. And we'll talk a little bit later on about what happened in 2024, but I mean, this was not a surprise to anybody. People in the community have been saying things very sternly and / or shouting for a while now, so I don't think anybody is surprised by that.
No, and when I look at this, it makes sense because we have the numbers on the number of people subscribing on the YouTube, the number of people watching on the audio feeds and whatnot, the Patreon turnover and all that, and I can tell that we're back to a different kind of period than we were previously, just based on those numbers. And the misplaced items player graph also confirms that, and we're kind of back to 2019 numbers when it comes to RuneScape 3 players here.
Yeah.
So
back to the pre-pandemic era.
Oh, let's unleash another pandemic. That'll help, right?
Don't give anyone any ideas.
No,
I think they're already planning that, aren't they?
Well, we'll see. So as you mentioned, Shane, revenue was essentially flat. It was down by 0.3%, which is like meaningless. Although, it is worth pointing out in like a business context, if your revenue stays the same,
your revenue has
gone down.
Yeah.
So in terms of subscription revenue was up by 6 million, or about 5% over the prior year. And microtransaction revenue, so that's for both RuneScape and old school RuneScape, that's bonds, as well as things like Solomon General Store for your rune coins and your treasure hunter keys for RuneScape. That was down by 5.4 million, or about 19%. And that actually is the second year in a row that we've been down. I didn't actually look back further. It could be that we're on a larger
I think it was around
that,
32 in 22, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, so last year we were down by 4 million, and this year we're down by another 5.4. So it's really, really significant decrease in microtransaction revenue. And one thing to consider with that as well is, like I said, this includes bonds for both games. When you have an uptick in player count for old school, one would assume that also the bond revenue is up for old school as well, which means that whatever the decrease for the RS3 side, it's going to be at least a little bit larger than that 5.4. How much larger? I can't say, because we don't have any inclination of what percentage of this microtransaction revenue is bonds, let alone bonds between both games. But
and this also answers for me that thing about what North said in his address, where the RuneScape 3 monetization model is not sustainable if you're losing 4 mil one year, 5 the next.
Yeah, and another thing to really consider with, yes, subscription revenue is up, and yes, microtransaction revenue is down. In 2024, we had the price of bonds increase, and we had the price of subscriptions increase. Now, granted, the price of subscription increase was towards the end of the calendar year, and it was also, for people who are on annual membership, it's not going to show up right away for most of them. But it's not an optimistic.
No, but don't forget, a lot of the Premier clubs were November, December is the most popular time for those. I know mine did, and the membership. I mean, my membership went up by nearly $40 on the previous year. So,
yeah. Well, they I don't know if "cancelled" is the right word, but the Premier membership is no longer has a grandfathered rate.
No, they got me hard on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and another funny thing that happened here with this is that we got confirmation of the sale price from Carlisle to CVC and Haveli. They sold for $584 million, and a lot of people, including us, laughed at a $900 million Great British Pound valuation for Jagex. So, 584, and then you realize where they were at a number of years ago. Yeah, that's more realistic, and maybe a little bit more than people should have paid. But there you go. That's another thing that we were right on when that sale happened.
Yeah.
And the other one thing that I find is it's just, I don't know, what businesses, it's like they look at everything in a vacuum, right? So what I would love to know is what decrease is due to things that Jagex has done, rightly, wrongly, whatever, versus everything has went up, man. People are squeezed a million different directions.
Oh, so how many people
One of the
canceled because of the cost, and how many people made the decision because of content?
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, because life is more expensive. Like, it sucks. We're being squeezed from every freaking direction.
Yep.
But and when that happens, these are the kinds of things that are the first to go. And especially if you're already a little bit like, they ain't done much for me, I'm not all that excited. They don't give you a reason to hold on to it over something else that you do have to let go.
Yeah, I don't know. And, you could engage in discussion with players on that to maybe get a bit of an idea for that.
Again, it's all going to be conjecture. Some people, are going to be embarrassed to say, I just can't afford it anymore, and just going to say, oh, it's due to content and things like that. A lot of people, they have that pride in themselves where,
But it's
I just can't afford it. So no, it's the content. So yeah, it's a tough one, but it'd be great to see. But yeah,
it's got to be a factor, though. You know what I mean?
of course, it's definitely a factor.
It's got to be. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if we'd ever know it, but I just, I think that like it just has to be. There has to be some kind of effect, because I know, like, for us, like, everything is more. I mean, everything is more expensive.
Yeah.
So
Oh yeah.
Yep.
I dropped two of my TV subscription services for that reason. I can't, it's just getting too expensive. I'm not getting the value out of this one as much as this one, so I'm going to drop it.
Yeah.
So where do we go from here in this regard then? We talked about the revenue, we talked about the profits, I guess, in that regard. Operating profit down by 14.5 million.
No dividends paid out to the shareholders.
That's interesting this year, because there was a huge amount the previous year.
Yep.
Not entirely clear why those get paid out. It's something that doesn't get disclosed in the financial statement. So
wait, wouldn't this be different people since a different company owns it or bought it?
Yeah, presumably. Yeah, I mean,
but they wouldn't they wouldn't, or would? Oh, because it's a year behind.
Yeah,
they'd still do. Okay, I was like, would they still do the same?
Because year to date, basically they made no increase on the year before, so ostensibly that would be the reason why they wouldn't pay out any dividends, because there's no profit as such.
What is a career framework? What did you make of that, Lemon?
So back in, this was something that I became aware of back in, I think, like February. I want to say it was in the weeks leading up to RuneFest. A number of the JMods got new titles, and it was sort of what I had heard from them was, sort of to bring things in line with industry standards. So one of the things that they had flagged in their management report was that they had introduced sorry, I'm trying to get where I am in the notes, career framework to provide clarity on career progression and lateral opportunities across the studio. Just make things more clear and straightforward. I do wonder, in relation to that, is if you had a whole bunch of changes to the way that you structure people's jobs. And then a couple of months later, you end up having these redundancies. I think those would have happened regardless, but it is one of those things that I just sort of look at and go,
yeah, it's an interesting coincidence when you look at that in terms of, lining up who might be a designer or something like that, or a producer, right?
Yeah. I think
fancy titles.
Yeah,
Like
I think
there was-
like
yeah.
Schmutz title changed to like a narrative designer or something to that effect. I don't remember what the actual title was, but
Yeah.
it's that sort of thing.
And it's an interesting thing too, because a lot of the dev work at Jagex is not only content dev, but it's also that design work, which is different than the industry when you look at it. So I can see maybe some of that playing into it as well.
Yeah. One thing that I do just want to make sure we touch on before we get further down is we talked about revenue staying pretty much flat. Operating profit, I know Shane, you had said that it was down 14.5, and I just wanted to add a little more context there. So revenue was essentially flat, and the operating profit was down due to substantially recognized impairment on investments. And what does that mean?
Which
That
is a
sounds like
huge accounting
garbage.
term.
Yeah, it's literally accounting garbage. But basically, there are standards in place that when you have assets or investments, in this case, the things we're talking about in particular are investments in companies, you are supposed to evaluate those on a regular basis, typically yearly, and assess whether or not the value that you have recorded for these things is correct and appropriate.
Oh,
so
okay.
In fiscal year 24, they recorded impairment on assets $26.7 million for Gamepires, which is the company that developed Scum. We talked about that a little bit in the last fiscal year review. And as well as $19 million for the US-based Jagex Holdings company. Presumably a lot of the my assumption would be that things like the intellectual property for the US is like based out of there. Not entirely sure exactly what would cause an impairment on that. Something that
I
company
know
is holding.
that Eugene, Oregon company was largely a developer acquisition.
Yes, yeah, and that was Pipeworks.
Yeah.
Which, seeing as you've brought that up, was sold in May of 2025. That's listed as a subsequent event on these financial statements.
Which again, there's that focus, that dedicated focus to the RuneScape games.
Yep. Yeah, I imagine that we're gonna see something else other than Dragon Wilds in the next couple of years. I don't know if that's something that's already in development or not, but it seems like, from my reading of the financial statements today, that they are looking at more than just the one thing. But it's unclear whether or not that's actually in development.
Which is smart to do, because Dragon Wilds is early access. Its Steam chart has been relatively flat in that regard. They pushed only a couple updates after the launch, and now they're kind of just cruising until the next major content release. So I have questions about the future of Dragon Wilds in that regard of where the money comes in. So it makes sense to have other opportunities.
Their actual cash holdings are down 18 million as well.
Yeah, it's unclear exactly what the reason for that is. It all kind of washes out on. Cash touches everything, so without a proper statement of cash
without
balance
sheet.
We have, as we were talking earlier, which all companies do, but loans to subsidiary companies of the parent company and such all comes into play. But that is having a big drop of 18 million in actual cash on hand holdings is a significant drop as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Another thing that I'll say as well that was just interesting to see and hear. They specifically made mention of the RuneScape ahead posts, which they say are a bi-yearly event happening twice a year. So we have that in terms of making it a corporate policy now to announce when the game's future updates are coming out. So presumably at least we'll be getting another roadmap come September-ish.
Yeah, I think that this is one of those things that the RuneScape 3 team is taking on from the old school team. The old school team is, for a number of years now, has been doing their summits, which they do a couple times a year, and, you know, laying out what's coming and all that sorts of stuff, getting opportunities for feedback, all that sorts of stuff. And I think as we are, it feels to me like of this past 6 months, 12 months, probably not 12, but we're seeing a lot of the things that worked for the old school team being brought over to RuneScape.
And you know, that's something that they need to do, and because of just carrying the actual content forward, I don't know if you're going to, you know, necessarily be able to grow the subscriber base in that same way, because old school captures in on that nostalgia aspect like we talked about earlier for the people that wanted to remain 2008.
It's always so interesting to me that they talk about the nostalgia aspect of old school RuneScape, because, like, to me it doesn't have that.
No, it's I
think it's what brings people back.
It's what people, yeah.
It's not why they stay, but it's why they come back in the first place.
No, and you know, that nostalgia ran out for me, and I was done with old school after that. More on that on another show, either, you know, later on or on OSRS update. But yeah, bit of a preview there for what's to come on that. Yeah. They highlighted RuneFest at the NEC this year. 3,000 fans, the on-hand previews of, you know, pre-release content and whatnot. So there was that aspect of it. Revenue recognition, consumable versus durables. Lemon, help us with the accounting speak on this.
We had a big conversation about this when we did the 2023 financials, and I do just want to just reiterate the framework here that we're talking about. So in terms of subscriptions, in terms of purchases of microtransactions, you've got stuff that is quote-unquote consumable, and the revenue for that is recognized at a specific point in time. And then you have quote-unquote durables, which are recorded over a period of time. We talked back in March about, you know, like how these durable things are amortized over the course of the life of the account. And we were going back and forth trying to, you know, suss out, like, how long is that? Well, apparently it was already in last year's financial statements, and I just didn't see the place where it was written. But so they consider the meaningful life for these things to be 12 months.
Which I think makes sense.
So anything that's like a durable, like, account purchase, so things like your treasure hunter keys are, like, consumable. They're used once you use them. But if you pay for rune coins and you use those rune coins to purchase a bank booster, that gets, the revenue for that gets recognized over 12 months. So just wanted to sort of tie up that conversation from March.
And I mean, it doesn't make any difference to us. At the end of the day, it's just how they account for it.
Right, exactly.
So, all right. They also made significant increases in technical and commercial management staff, and you know, I wonder specifically about this. Was there any cuts to these people this week?
I would hazard a guess to say yes.
Because they said non-player, most of them are non-player facing, and that's exactly what was described right there.
Yeah, I think, I mean, granted, you know, with the caveat that you had mentioned earlier that, you know, not necessarily all changes in the sign-off are specifically representative of people no longer being with the company, but I believe Zerdones had said that, like, some of the people who had their names no longer listed were in positions like marketing and stuff like that. So those would be like your commercial management type positions in the organization. I think it's really interesting that we had such an increase in these in the first place.
Yeah, they increased overall 454 to 495 staff members.
Yeah, that's a really big increase. I wonder. I mean, some of these are going to be Dragon Wilds related, right? But you would imagine that a lot of that would be on the development side, which is
No, development remained constant
by one. Decreased by one person, 265 to 264. So, I guess marketing and stuff with the upcoming Dragon Wild stuff. I'm not entirely sure.
I know another thing that they had in the last year that was new for them is that they had 12-month contracts for things like consultants and whatnot.
Without knowing specifically how that sort of stuff might be handled differently with UK labor laws, I'm assuming that wouldn't show up in employees, because that sounds like a contractor type position to me, which would be reported differently. But I'm not I don't know enough about
fair enough.
UK specifics.
We do that here. Subcontractors are different to actual employees.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming a lot of our stuff is based on the UK, so I'm going to assume it's the same.
Yeah. It's so that they don't have to pay benefits,
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm. It's the good ground stuff.
One of the things that I was speculating about with regards to this is we had an increase of 23 people for the technical side. My reckon on the technical category is this is your engine work type people, and it makes sense to me that any hires that they made relating to Project Zenaris were going to be bucketed.
That was
here.
A huge technical project.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Yep. I believe that Maud Aiza had said that nobody on the Project Zenaris team was let go when that project was canceled, or I guess I should say paused indefinitely.
It was paused indefinitely, not canceled.
So, presumably they're working on other stuff, but yeah, regardless.
It paints an interesting picture, because we get to a point here where Jagex's history is that, they caught fire with RuneScape, made some changes the community absolutely hated, and then put out another product that, reverted those changes. And over time, that product, due to not being willing to take a risk with the other product, RS3, old school, of course, comes out ahead. And I'm trying to rack my head if I can think of any other company that has such an arc like that and has managed to remain profitable over time. Did we already mention the Pipework sale, Lemon? Because I want to maybe move on to okay, so we can move on to the timeline then with that, because this covers fiscal year 24, which for a lot of companies might be April, might be June 1, that sort of thing, or June 30th. But Jagex does theirs on the calendar year.
Yes.
So we're looking at January 1, 24 to December 31st, 24 here. And we're dealing with a lot of the problems that we had at the tail end of 23, coming into 24 with, dare I say it, the dreaded Hero Pass. That, in my view, sucked the wind right out of necromancy.
100%, yeah. When we talked about the 23 financials, we had talked quite a bit about, I think I had described, what seemed like the plan for Necromancy and Hero Pass was this 1-2 punch, right? Where you have this new skill release, new combat release, new more accessible combat release, bring people back into the game, get people involved in combat to a degree where they hadn't been involved in the past. And then you're launching this new monetization scheme. And that backfired, to say the least. And
we knew at that point that the Treasure Hunter revenue and the MTX revenue was already going down. So the thing we postulated with that one was that Hero Pass was a way to try and reverse that, but it didn't.
Yeah, you if you're coming off of a period where your microtransaction revenue has been decreasing, and you've been trying new stuff and it's been decreasing, you got to try not just like a new treasure hunter promo, but you got to do something entirely different. And they tried that, and for various reasons, the community hated it.
No, I'll save you some time. It blew up spectacularly.
Yeah. I mean, And then
you couple it with also the fact that we had an executive producer at the time, and we talked about ModKeeper's time at the company that effectively let the devs do what they, thought needed to be done. And we wound up with, throughout that period up until, like March or April of 24, with like practically no content after Necromancy.
Yeah, it definitely felt like they scrapped some of the stuff that they had planned. I would imagine that Hero Pass or iterations of it would have been an annual thing, much like Yak Track had been an annual thing. But we started the fiscal year with a really down a position in terms of subscribers coming off the Hero Pass, because that really was, there are people in the community who love to say that, they're gonna quit, and they never quit. We saw very demonstrably people stopped playing.
Well, yeah, and that's what I told people at the time. I said, don't complain on Reddit or social media about this. If you really have an issue with this monetization, the best way to send that message en masse is to just stop. Cancel the subscription.
Yep.
And it looks like people did that.
Yeah.
So Shane's fault.
No.
Blame Shane.
No.
Shane caused a drop.
Yep.
Well, what the takeaway from this is that we have a message that ModKeeper had put out in March of 2024 saying that they were reshaping, quote, how they design, plan, develop, and operate. Basically, we're throwing everything out and we're starting from scratch.
Including throwing him out, dare I say.
Eventually, yes.
You've got to also look at that first quarter of 2024. There was virtually nothing.
It was dire.
Game updates. It was.
Like, that's the whole...
We were at the point of going, what is happening?
That's the whole reason I indexed into old school. And at the end of 23, at the, when leaks started, that's when we started OSRS update, because we were treading water here, honestly.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's more telling than anything else. Is like, I think you lose. I think we lost more people because of that than because of
we gave it credit for at the time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. I thought, you'll have a bit of a drop and they'll come back. But when you've dropped Hero Pass and then you have no content for 3 or 4 months, people looking at it, and people found other games, and people, migrated to OS and stayed there. And, as I said, Shane was splitting his time between the two games. I mean, he was spending just as much time on OS as he was on RS3. So... Sirion. I mean, I don't think I've seen Sirion on RS3 since he started the OSRS after Hero Pass. So, it was. I think it was a very dire time,
and this underscores why you got to get the ship in order, and you got to go, take risks, break things, move quickly.
And this is why you should always have things in the background ready to drop. I mean, there is nothing wrong with having 4 or 5 bottle quests in backup that you can drop at any time when something has to be cancelled and you need some content just to keep that flow going. Just having something ready to drop when something hits the fan.
And dare I say, that's where the Game Jam projects come in, because when we got in what was it, May of 2024, we had the
Daemonheim Archaeology.
Yeah, we had the roadmap release, and the first thing that dropped was the Damonheim archaeology dig site, which was a game jam project.
Which is what people
Which I
wanted.
spent way too.
I wish we had video
long
right now.
chasing
I'm doing the Italian finger thing right now.
The Q1 was a very frustrating time for a lot of people. We had the success of the Christmas Village at the end of December. At the beginning of December. I mean, all through December, but you know what I mean. And there was this push to create those seasonal hubs and those seasonal events that had been missing, that people had really enjoyed in prior years and had, sort of been left by the wayside. So then they pivoted really hard into that, and then in April, no, stop, we're scrapping that. We're not we're not making a new summer hub. We're just going to rerun the beach, and instead we're developing permanent content. And you know what? They made that pivot. Well, who knows when they made that pivot? Like, they announced that pivot to us on April 16th. And
the typical pipeline for a small RS update is about 6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah, and, we had, I believe I think Requiem for a Dragon was probably in the beginning of May. I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah.
But within just the first couple of months of that, we had Requiem for a Dragon, we had Osseous, we had the Archaeology Dig site, and then I think it was July, we had the Sanctum of Rebirth. Like, we had...
And then the Gate, and then...
110 mining and smithing, and then we
that's the thing that made me so optimistic, is that they really turned the corner and started cranking things out up to this point.
And it was great. Like,
and we're
much
still,
of this stuff
and we're
was
still
great.
on this good content path right now. It just seems that they can't get the monetization side of RS3 to where it needs to be. And they can't. And that's problem one. And the problem two is that they can't bring in people.
Yeah, and I think the thing that's frustrating about it is that so much of the community is discontent right now.
Yeah.
So things that might have otherwise been like, oh, this is a nice update. People are now just irate is maybe too strong a word. They're a little
jaded.
bit pissed off, right?
They're jaded.
They're jaded. They are very critical about things not quite hitting the way that they think that they should. Like, for instance,
Game
110 smithing and mining. Like, that came out last year, and it was fine. It was the first 110 update that we had, so there was a lot of, things that we would do differently, I'm sure, if we were doing mining and smithing this year, but, like, it wasn't perfect,
right? Like
was
putting
really
all the just making all the rocks the Damonheim rocks, and not giving a spec or a passive to the weapon off the bat.
Mm-hmm.
One of those has since been fixed last week.
Yeah, it's a shame that it took this long for those things to happen. Although, that wasn't the original scope of the project. They hadn't intended
it wasn't,
do
and it wasn't game breaking
or anything.
To a degree, and that's why you put these things off to the side until the devs have time to go into those sorts of things.
Yeah, but it's like there wasn't inherently anything wrong with 110 mining and 110 smithing. It did exactly what it needed to do. It's just that people wanted more because they've been so frustrated.
Yeah,
and it was really, let's just pull the ores out of Damonheim and drop them up here for you, and just add a few extra things. It did. I mean, as a whole, it was a nice little update, but it wasn't groundbreaking or spectacular.
No, and that's the thing I really want to highlight through this. We talked about the layoffs. We talked about the people and the business decisions needed to be made there. There's a business interest pulling Jagex for RS3 in one direction, and it's not able to deliver on it. And that's why That's why we saw the cutbacks this week. But on the other hand, when it comes to player-facing content, I think if you go back to, a year from where we are right now, starting with that Daemonheim dig site, I think we're in an okay spot content-wise in terms of the variety and everything that was put out in terms of the bosses and the quest cadence and everything.
Definitely.
To that effect. So it's a question of, how do you thread that needle of making the game profitable enough for the people who are concerned about that, but also making it so that you can, bring people in and, dare I say it, bring some of those people back from old school.
That is the big problem between having a public-owned company like that and just a private-owned company where you have people with a passion who own a company. And, profits need to be there, but they're secondary to having everything running properly and smoothly and everyone being happy. When you just start looking in that vacuum of how much money am I making, things drop. You drop the ball, and unfortunately, that is what's happening when you have all these equity companies taking over.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that is probably the entire through line on this, and it's that push to make the game more profitable and just the worry that this week's changes on the staff side bring. The only ray of hope that I see that, makes me feel a little bit good about this is the fact that we've actually had, about a year's worth of decently good and regular content. I know there are going to be people out there who say that, it wasn't enough, but this is, the kind of scope that you're looking at when you look at the production value that RS3 demands of it.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right. Anybody have anything else on numbers or anything like that? Yeah, go.
No, just one thing. We did skip over it. While there was no change to the cost of treasure hunter keys, between 2023 we had 75 treasure hunter promotions. In 2024 there were 102. So it's 27 more treasure hunter promotions, and still the numbers were down on it. And again, it's you can't get blood from a stone, and you just keep bleeding people. Less is more sometimes.
Well, and I mean, you have it here right now. You can get a third, or no, what is it? You can get about 2/3 of the progress on this week's, on this weekend's Treasure Hunter promo if you do your dailies. You have Premiere, and you if you have Premiere, you use your daily keys and you do your daily challenges. You can get about 2/3 of the way on this. You need to open 50 keys, and you get a woodcutting cosmetic override. And I would love it if they could direct sale that, but this is the exact same thing. Your people who are going to put the money into the game, who are the whales, are probably tapped out at this point because they're 120 all, 200 mil all, and you're running out of people who are willing to spend that kind of money on RS3, and there is a portion of the player base out there that is turned away by this sort of marketing.
Yep. I mean, even myself, who is, I am someone. I've got to unlock something if it's there to unlock. The treasure hunter is, I don't do unless I'll use my free keys, but that's it. But it's just when you have so many of these things coming, and it's just why bother? It'll come up again somewhere. They'll throw it on the oddment store eventually. But it's you've got to. I think we need a total redevelopment of Solomon's store.
No, I'll one up that. We need a total redevelopment of the monetization model of RS3 outside of the subscription.
Yeah,
100%. But that's something that is going to take time, and it's going to take guts, and it's going to be incremental.
I think even Hooli said something about this week, that they're aware of that, and he promises that next time they actually talk about that, they'll have something concrete, despite mentioning it, I think, in March or April, or was it February before RuneFest, and nothing really came of it.
Yeah.
But you look... So if you look at those treasure hunter promotions, there's 52 weeks in a year. We had 102. That's almost 2 a week in Treasure Hunter promotions. Really?
Well, it is
You're
2 a
giving
week if you
two-
remove Halloween and Christmas.
Well, exactly. Yeah.
Because the Halloween and Christmas ones are
promotions
static.
a week you're pushing on people. And I'm sorry, but that's egregious. No one. I mean, that is not a good look in anyone's book. And even me, who I don't care. It's Treasure Hunter's there. Who cares? When I'm looking at something going, wow, that is, that's bad. It's bad because, I come from a business background, and how to monetize. You've got to make money, you've got to make profit, and all
I'll
that.
even
When
say,
I'm saying you're doing too much,
Yeah, and it's become less of an issue for us because of the group Iron Man.
How brilliant is it that you don't have to worry about all that stuff? I didn't even know there was a promotion on this week. I haven't logged onto the Pern account for 2 months.
Nice.
I think it also may prove, and I know it's going to be hard for some people to take, but it it proves, as much as we wish people would just pay for cosmetics and that's what keeps everything going, it's not.
No, it's not Fortnite. It's not Overwatch. It doesn't. It can't.
But again,
yes.
I bought that. Well, one of those outfits, just to show, hey, it's a good looking outfit.
Time Mage. I did that for Time
Mage.
Mage. I bought that with bonds on both accounts.
Yep, there was another one before that. It was the Black Primal armor. That's what it was. I thought that looks really good. I'm just going to buy it. I'll, probably not something I'm going to wear a lot, but just to show support that, hey, this is the way you should be monetizing. I'll throw you your $15 for it. I just paid for it outright. That type of thing.
That's good.
Well,
I just
and
think you got outvoted.
Right. And let me tell the story about the Time Mage stuff. I like the way the Time Mage outfits look. But I won't ever do that again because it clipped with other things I was wearing. And I realize we're dealing with an old game and old cosmetics here, but you can't ask people to put real money in or items that have a real world value to them if they're not going to be that grade A quality.
Yep. And that was the thing with the primal, the Black Primal as well. When you when I put my cape on with it, it was clipping through that. Or if you had a sword sheathed on your back rather than carrying it, that was clipping. So yeah, I understand what you mean there.
So yeah, I mean it's time. The next thing is a big redesign of the monetization model of RS3. And until then, you're not going to start winning people back that you lost it to old school. It's as simple as that. Because the content's been good. It hasn't been like God Wars Dungeon or Elder God Wars Dungeon level of content. It's been one tier below that, I'll say.
Yeah, but it's still enough to keep the interest and keep you playing and, having fun.
But only out the second half of the year, right? So
well, exactly.
I'm just looking at the last year right now.
Yeah.
Like 1 year.
And that's what we're talking about. Even Osseous. Even I enjoyed Osseous, and I'm not a big PVMer. The dig site. How long did I spend at the dig site trying to get that one freaking piece? I was like, but Sanctum of Rebirth, all that type of stuff.
That was,
again,
looking at this list. If I wasn't an archaeology fan, Sanctum would be on there as my number one.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah, that was really good. Gates of Elidness, again, I think they need to reevaluate what they're going to define as a skilling boss. I really think, to me, Big Game Hunter is a skilling boss encounter where the other two are just boss encounters using skilling methods. To be fair, I haven't done the group one. Got the name now.
Croesus.
We're going there soon. Croesus, that's the one. But I did a lot of Gates of Elidinus, and I mean, I'm sorry, it was just a regular PVM boss encounter, just using a pickaxe instead of anything else. But if they can start looking at that type of stuff more, maybe there'll be something.
Yeah, but again, that's one plank of it, because remember how much goodwill they pissed away with that survey at the start of the year. So,
Yeah.
Oh yes.
Can I take us on a little bit of a journey for a minute?
Yeah, please.
Okay. You asked earlier on when we were talking higher up in the show about what can we do in order to turn things around. I mean, like we all understand that first and foremost, right? You need to be able to bring new players on board, and related to that, you need to stop the hemorrhaging. I just want to run through this year that we're talking about, 2024, and just sort of address some of the issues, because there have been great things, and we've talked about some of the great things, but it's just I just want to lay this out. I'm going to start in April, because we already established that the first quarter was kind of a write-off.
Yeah.
So April 16th is when we have the news that they've scrapped the seasonal hubs and they're going with permanent content again. April 22nd, we get Requiem for a Dragon. Really nice quest. That was awesome. And then we go to, let's see what's next on the list. In May, we get the roadmap reveal. That's fantastic. We have great things coming. We know what to expect for the rest of the year. Everybody loved that. We get the player survey. Awesome. That's great. We get May 22nd. We get Osseous released. Awesome. That's wonderful. Just got to make sure I'm following my order of events here. Sorry, I didn't talk about this. It was before all this stuff. April 11th was the Vault of Riches promo for Treasure Hunter, which is the one that had the 1 billion coin grand prize.
I forgot about that one.
What we keep having is we have some really shitty thing that happens that pisses the community off, and we have some really great stuff that happens, and we keep having this cycle, right? So we have the Treasure Hunter 1 billion coins. We've got a really great quest. We've got the event hub that's scrapped. We've got the roadmap. In June of 2025, we got the bond prices increased. People are upset. The price of microtransactions has gone up. In July, we get the Sanctum of Rebirth. Everybody was like, oh my god, this is the best PVM encounter we've ever had. This is so great. It's a lot of fun. It's super readable, and everything about it is lovely. And then what happened in August? 110 Smithing was kind of a mix. Don't think we had... Oh, August... this would have been good if I had laid everything on chronological order. July 26th, we had the player value survey. That was the one about how do we get what do you feel is valuable to you as a player? Yeah. That pissed people off so much. So in between, and then we've got mining and smithing, and then we've got Ode to Devourer that was wonderful in September. We had a secondary survey for microtransactions, pissed people off again. What I'm getting at here is we get something great, we get something shitty, we get something great, we get something shitty, and it's like we need consistent greatness for a period of time for people to feel like things are moving in the upward direction. And it feels like every time we feel like we're making progress,
and the issue,
somebody feels like they get kicked in the shin again.
It feels as though when you list this out, one team is responsible for the content, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have the monetization team for the other side of it. What you need, and Tanis and I have talked about this going back years, you need a community spin doctor, a press secretary, to put this stuff out to make sure that what is coming down the pipe isn't going to be causing these sorts of actions, or reactions rather. Which I think that should be CM's job. but I don't think they're doing that proactively.
I don't
Well,
know.
they need a strong manager to be able to do
I
it,
don't know
and
that
it's
they're
a very
to do that.
yeah, and it is going to be a hard sell. It's a snakes and ladders game. You know, you're going up, and then you shoot down again.
Well, you know what it
Climb
comes
back
down
up.
to at the end of the day? Trust.
Yeah. Yeah.
Build the trust. Build the trust.
You know what that would be a really great way to build the trust? Take a break from Treasure Hunter.
Maybe.
People
Like they
would
did
love that.
between,
Maybe.
like
But-
the little break they took between Squeal and before they brought Treasure Hunter out. We had 2 or 3 months where we had nothing, and
Build
there
the
were no
trust.
complaints during that time. Yep.
Build the trust and be honest and explain everything that you're
Yep.
doing.
Yeah,
We're going to bring
we're-
something back, but we're going to remove the thing you don't like until we're ready to release that new thing for you.
We're going to talk a little bit about the game health update again in a little bit, but one of the things that whether or not the people in the community are being genuine about it or being disingenuous about it, like, it doesn't matter that
It's the
regardless of
perception.
how
It's the perception at the end of the day.
Yeah, regardless of how impactful Treasure Hunter is in terms of the inflationary aspects of that, people are still pissed about it. And it doesn't matter if it's less impactful
Yeah, it
than
wasn't
it was
in the top
previously.
5. Which,
It's just people are just upset about it.
Yeah.
And if you continue to push new Treasure Hunter promotions while you're trying to have these conversations about the game health and about inflation, people are going to get upset about that.
and see, that's the thing.
You can't blame them for that, even if they're not necessarily in the right.
Right, and even if it's not economically in the top 5, it's still going to cause that issue. And see, that's the thing, looking at it from a purely economic stance, those tables they put out, Treasure Hunter is not in the top 5. And what you were supposed to read into that table was that Treasure Hunter is not as big of a deal when it comes to that GP inflation. But what Lemon is saying right now is that Treasure Hunter has been a persistent problem for years, and by having it on the table in the top 10 and not addressing it while nerfing some of the people's favorite bosses, then you get to how it is a problem.
And then on top of that, not even executing it and giving them what they actually want to pay for. You're not even doing that part right.
It's just so. What you said, Shane, about building trust is 100% true.
Yeah.
And if you're continuing to not, and it's not the fault of the community management team, because they would love to say something if they had something that they were allowed to say that people would want to hear. One hand does one thing and the other hand does the other thing. And it's until we get a scale back of
it needs to be a unified. It needs to be a unified strategy of content dev, monetization dev, and community management to figure out what the solution is and how to present that in a way that is honest and forthright.
Yeah, and I mean, every time they try to do this, they get burned. Sometimes because it's their fault, sometimes it's not their fault. Sometimes they don't fully appreciate the way that they say things, how it's going to be
right. It's like the post I was telling you about with the
disingenuously.
table of the MTX in the top 5 economically, and that first post as an explainer is wonderful, but that's not the way the people who are against monetization see it, unfortunately.
Yep.
So
I think we genuinely need to have, like a come to Jesus moment and really have like a really clear discussion. And
I hope it's coming.
Think eventually it's going to happen, but is it going to happen in the next few months? I mean, this was something that was promised last year with the player value survey, and we're still waiting.
Yeah. Okay.
Coming up on a year.
Months later.
Yeah. All right. Anything else on? I know that was a wild departure from financials, but it needed to be said because A leads to B leads to C, and then you add everything up, and you get the answer at the end of the day on that. Are you guys good to move on to patch notes? I think we're probably about time for that. So
yeah, let me just say one more thing. We've got leagues coming up at the end of this year. That, like, the whole reason we're getting leagues is because that's one of the major things that has led to the attraction of new players for old school RuneScape.
yeah,
You can't mess that up. And I don't mean mess that up as in, like, leagues isn't going to be great. It's that once people come back, you got to make sure that what they're left with after leagues is
you don't
gone.
have any of these treasure hunter fiasco things popping up in front of you.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. The EzK got buffed this week, following from where it was last week. They reduced the adrenaline cost of Igneous Showdown to 50%. Ash and Vow will now provide a 12% damage dealt and minus 12% damage received against your Flamebound rival, up from 5. And casting Igneous Showdown against your Flamebound rival deals an additional 3 hits, each dealing 225% damage on average against your target, instead of increasing the damage of a single hit. And casting Igneous Showdown against your Flamebound rival now refunds 15% adrenaline. And maybe overtuned? One-shot Araxor here? Anything? Max stacks of, like, getting 25, 30k from what I've seen this week.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
Wait.
I mean,
on a weapon that good. I mean,
it's a tier 95 legendary. It should be good. And
exactly.
You know, I feel like bleeds are always cumbersome in RS just because of how they're implemented. So melee as the bleed style never really stood out to me. If instead you lean into this and, you know, have for its legendary weapon, just make it like the big, huge Alpha Strike kind of weapon that can max out its hit splats over one hit like this if you know what you're doing, I think that's kind of special.
Yeah, I think it's got a really great identity. I think it's really fun. I love it.
You won't catch me doing melee because you still need all the switches for it. But I think for the people who want to do that and have this high hitting weapon, power to you. So even though it might seem a little bit powerful, maybe that's the way to go.
Yeah, what I don't know as of right now is how effective is it if you were to just camp an EzK, forego all of your switches, just use your EzK. Maybe you've got I don't know, like a declaw or something in your EOF, but like, how good is it if you're just rocking around investments and an EOF and you're not dealing with any of the problems that Melee has been plagued with over the years in terms of switches? How good is that? I'm not sure.
Because like all the videos I saw, you're rotating into a ZGS spec. You're swapping out of the cold cuts before you move to EzK, and you still got multiple EOFs in your inventory and whatnot. So I think that question of just camping an EzK is going to be an interesting one with the vestments. Which I'm gonna reach out to some people and see if we can get something on that at some point, because that would be actually a fun experiment.
That's what I was going to say. It is like for someone like me who is just, I take one weapon and that's it. I mean, if you're doing all that switching and all that, power to you, and if you're getting a one-hit Araxi, great, but you have to do all that sweaty stuff. You should be able to get rewarded with things like that from a T95 weapon. It's I like what they've done to it. Not something I'll use, being that I am a one-weapon person, but it sounds like they're making the weapon worthwhile now.
Yeah, totally.
One thing that I want to say is, although the primary update for this was last week, and also with the magic updates, I am really interested in not using necromancy for a while, and I need to get the gear on this account in order to do that. But like, I want to play around with these new toys. It seems like Magic is in a really great place. It seems like Melee is in a really great place. I think Range still has a lot of management issues in terms of counting stacks with bulbs and switching arrows and all this sorts of stuff, but it seems like Magic and Melee are in a really good place right now, and I want to use them.
Yeah, I was thinking that exact same thing. Is that I'll still use Necromancy as my daily driver, but on the GIM, I definitely see a future where once 110 crafting comes, I go for the magic power armor there, and lean into that a bit at the higher level and just do some experimenting with it. So yeah. They also gave War's Retreat a new music track called War's Patience. You can preview this in the news post for this week if you want, but the story behind it was that the existing track in there that, while great, this new one ticks a box for something that's a little bit more relaxed. So during Game Jam, Mod Nixon composed a new track that offers a calmer and more reflective soundscape for those quieter moments in War's Retreat, and that's good. I actually think I like the newer track more than the older one, given the fact that it's still iconic, but I think I prefer the new one instead.
The old one used to just drive me nuts when I'd have it up loud in the study. I'd always just end up switching the music
Well,
off.
remember they made a change a few months ago, or at the tail end of last year, where they lowered the volume of it at the start of it.
The volume, yeah.
Yeah, but still, when it goes on and on, oh god.
How do the pugs react to that one?
Oh no, they're okay with that. The music they're okay with. It's only the giggling and the the dogs bark when you got someone with a dog that barks when the law hound's out. That's another good one.
Really?
That's another good one. Yeah.
That and Grigorovic, right?
Yeah, the giggling Grigoric's giggling is sends them nuts. I should record it one day. I'll just put it on and just let everyone have a listen.
That would be good.
See what I have to put up with.
The Rune Goldberg machine has been changed to allow the player to continue to farm the optimal choice on the given day they log in until they log out. So it won't change until you log out for that.
Mm.
You can now redeem all held effigy stars and lamps from the effigy incubator in one go.
This is so good.
Yeah.
Yes.
So much.
Do all. Open all.
I should do that because I just have a whole stack of the little buggers on my main that were just there from when I did that. So I'm going to do that after the show. Segregation and Zygamite's care styling now correctly uses the POF farming reputation perk for unchecked animals if you have it unlocked. So it wasn't paying attention to that. And then for Cluers and Tetra Compass goers, a shortcut has been added next to the fairy ring in the Poison Wastes that will require partial completion of Plague's End and 75 agility.
Excellent
Very
update.
nice.
I never understood that fairy ring. You'd go there, you'd unlock it, but it goes nowhere. You land on an island, you look around, and you teleport out again.
I think they took inspiration from old school on this one, if I'm correct.
Okay.
Such a thing.
Something's
might
been
exist
long needed, so that's very good.
All right, there's the patch notes for the week, and we do have a bit of an update as well on the game health post, otherwise the nerfening, as we talked about last week. They made some tweaks to it, and it largely focuses in on the spirit weed seeds, like we mentioned as being a question of where you get them. So they said there are questions on whether or not these are still dropped from normal Archglacier, and they confirmed that they are dropped from there. And although not explicitly mentioned under the normal mode Archglacier blog, they were not removed, and they're going to be adding them to more sources with a keen eye on Slayer mobs. And I think that's actually maybe a good way of doing this, of doing things like even the dwarf weed and torstal seeds, like we were talking about for you for you Slayer people, Pern. Just put them on the Slayer tables.
Yeah. I mean, you can
this
take out some of those fell stalks and the higher end ones and throw in torstal. I mean, we get so many fell stalks, which is the highest, but they're only so useful. But torstals are just for an Iron Man. Torsals is one of the hardest things to get.
Yeah, Lemon, do you have any advice on that for iron stuff like Torstal and Dwarfweed?
Do Raziel before the drop table rebalance happens.
Yeah.
I have to say, I really like this. I think this is, like, to me, this is exactly what Slayer is for. Like, this sort of supply upkeep. Things like Seeds specifically is, like, very linked with Slayer in my mind. So I'm a big fan of this.
Ceramic scales will be added to more sources, also Slayer-based. They'll be upping the number of cannonballs from Carapac, and they also have desires to make the creation of cannonballs easier overall, though these will be aspirations for the future, not something that have a defined plan right now. And for the Archglacier normal mode multiplier, which we discussed on the show last week, is that you're really not going to want to do, more than 1 mech or 0 mech Archglacier unless you're using it as a learning experience. They said they'll be upping the scaling for the higher mechanic kills to ensure it's more worthwhile doing those rather than repeating lower mechanic fights for faster kills and loot.
Oh, so I can't just throw the 0 and just sit there and watch TV and walk away and come back and...
You can for about 3 weeks. You can for about 3 weeks. They have the eye of releasing this in July right now, according to Mod Huli.
Yeah. I just want to comment on the rebalance as a whole real quick. I'm a really big fan of this, not just because, like the drop tables are overtuned and it really is in the best interest of the game to bring them back in line, but I also am like really looking forward to some of the rare items being a little bit more obtainable.
Yeah.
I've been sitting at 2 out of 3 Fasoa pieces on the group iron for a couple of months now. I'm really looking forward to being able to get that last one ticked off just a little bit quicker, especially when, it's like I've made one, but if some of us are going to be pivoting back into mage, then like we're going to need more than one on the team. So I'm really a fan of this, and I'm like specifically waiting to go back to Carapac, to go back to Zamorak until after these drop table rebalances happen, because the drops that I actually care about are going to be more common.
Yeah, that's a very good point, and I think that kind of scratches the itch that people had been leaning towards, that they were saying, well, give us bad luck mitigation. And I think this is the compromise in between. You get a bit better rates on some of them, but you also have to give up some of the commons in place.
Yeah,
so.
Bad luck mitigation would be a better solution, but it's also a lot more of a complicated solution.
Right, because it comes down to that entire question, what does that do to the value of common drops, and can you have them?
Yeah, and also, like, how do you implement the bad luck mitigation, right? Yeah. I mean, it just to use Carapac and Carapac as an example, Carapac already has bad luck mitigation. We just don't realize it, right? Dropping the staff in 3 pieces is already a form of bad luck mitigation. We just don't look at it that way. Although I do think that we have had better instances of bad luck mitigation. Specifically, the thing that comes to mind is the oath plate for old school, and I won't derail us with a conversation about that. But
yeah, that was some really good game design that they did there.
Yeah, I would love to see something like that.
YouTube.com/ad OSRS update, the second to most recent episode on that. But
Carapac, sorry.
Yeah.
The Carapac drops, do they drop in order, or is it just random, so you can end up with 3 pieces of one section and none of the others, or...
They drop in order. The order is random. Or let me rephrase it. The order is predetermined for each account. And the only way you can mess that up is if you loot share, because then you end up getting somebody else's piece. And that messes that up.
And we can transmute them now. They added that with Group Iron Map. So.
Yep. The whole reason for that was to not disincentivize doing bosses with your teammates.
Yeah.
So, big fan.
And the MTX Demon rears its ugly head again. Huli addressed that the discussion on the economy based on or the discussion on the economy beyond standard gameplay into areas like MTX is not relevant to this team, but it is something that the players want addressed. He says, given that we are well overdue for an update from their September MTX consultancy post, he says, I hope it is a bit understandable that if I'm cautious of any firm timings, the next time you hear from us on our MTX plans, it needs to not be a false start. The conversations you want are coming, and barring any changes or new information in the not-too-distant future as it stands.
We'll get here eventually, but...
let's hope that they do it in a way that doesn't, like we said, turn the table upside down. But we do have a few achievements as well this week. We're slipping off from the DXP stuff since that's done. We have Legion 1943 with 120 crafting on the first, Zenklar with 99 necromancy on the first, and Uili with 99 necromancy on the 31st.
Nice.
All right, so I'm going to do a pick of the week that's a YouTube channel, and in particular, their most recent video is something that RS players should watch after this week, and the YouTube channel is Wendover Productions. It's something that I've been aware of for a little bit, and no, Tan, it's not Bendover like you said, but when you question, where can you watch stuff on the internet that's not going to be, outright, flame baity, that sort of thing. This is one of those channels that comes to mind, and one of their most recent videos from last week is the downfall of Southwest Airlines, and in particular some of the private equity stuff that's gone into that, and in particular about how the company, as a result, after a few missteps, has gone on the downhill since a major snowstorm in 2023. But they also do other content as well. One of the videos they have is the logistics of fruit. So if you're ever wondering how your fruit gets to the table, that's something that's there. There's, of course, if you like trains and airlines, there's stuff on rail networks there as well. There's actually a video that they did last year, the logistics of a presidential campaign, how they transitioned the Biden campaign to the Harris campaign overnight. More on airlines and so on and so forth. The Korean DMZ, a discussion on Utah, of all states, and how they actually managed to lure business in despite some of the political leanings of the state. But it's a very interesting YouTube channel, and I figured I'd mention this this week because when you look at this here, the whole discussion of private equity and the way that hurts companies and causes companies to develop is something that is, just been with us probably since the early 1990s, late 1980s, and the discussion on that, particularly with Southwest and other things, and what private equity means for Jagex. I figured it's a good time to talk about this YouTube channel, and in particular the most recent video about the downfall of Southwest Airlines. So give that a watch. They're more longer form content, but it's still interesting nonetheless. You can find a link to it in the show notes over at update.show. Any of you heard about them before?
Nope.
But
I have heard of them, but I have not seen any of their videos.
Okay. Another good one was about how dollar stores quietly consumed America.
Oh, God.
That was one about last year, the rise of Dollar General.
Oh, God. Dollars. Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Dollar stores are a blight upon us.
I know, and it goes into that.
Oh.
So that might
Funny
be one.
because here we have the $2 stores here.
Yeah. But that was the other one I was thinking of that goes into private equity and why it's so important. but youtube.com/@Wendover Productions, or just get the link in the show notes at update.show. But that's pretty much it for this week. I don't think I have anything else. That's pretty much the end of the episode. Anybody have anything else before we go?
Nope.
No? Okie dokie. Well, next week, I teased the 20th anniversary of this podcast. That's next week. If you want that, when it arrives, update.show/subscribe. All the major podcast listening services out there, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pocket Casts, and more, as well as YouTube at youtube.com/RSBANDB. Do give us a like and subscribe. Greatly helps the channel out. And, of course, next week, we'll talk about, I think we're getting a seed next week. I think we're getting the flower seed next week before 110 crafting. So we'll talk about some seeds and farming equipment, just as we once did before on this podcast as we head into our 20th anniversary. But thank you, Lemon, for being here, talking about financials again. Didn't expect to be doing it so soon, but here we are.
Always a pleasure. This is my jam.
Right on. And of course, Pern, everyone's second favorite Australian.
Thank you.
And Tanis.
Thanks, Shane.
Bit of a not the way we wanted to open the week, but I think we got her done nonetheless. So with that being said, we'll see you guys next week for another episode of RSBANDB Update. See you then, everyone. Take care.
Happy Skype and all.
Bye.